Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We are super excited to have you all here today for the Power Up with the Power Platform session on education. My name is Cindy and I'm one of the interns here at Microsoft. And joining me today is Manasi from our Dynamics and Power Platform team, who focuses specifically on education, and Brad from Fusion5, who is going to be taking us through a really fantastic demo. Today we'll start by kicking things off with a brief overview of the Power Platform before diving into a particular use case around parent interactions and automating school processes. Over to you, Manasi.
Thank you, Cindy. Hi, everyone. I want to start off with giving a bit of context around why we are seeing so much of demand in the low-code platform, specifically Microsoft's low-code platform, which is called the Power Platform. In the last year, COVID-19 has really resulted in schools needing to adapt quickly. They had to embrace a lot of change and leverage modern solutions to combat the effects of the pandemic. Online teaching, online learning, communication to the community, backend administrative processes, and the systems that support these services really needed to keep up. And for IT, this really highlighted the need to innovate and build intelligent applications with a lot of flexibility and a lot of agility. However, custom code isn't really keeping up with the surging business demand. Schools often have limited IT staff. They rely on few staff with specialist developer skills to build this software. And we all know ground-up software development takes a lot of time, costs a lot of money, and sometimes can pose security and compliance risks. If we look at the number on the left-hand side of the screen, 500 million applications will be built in the next 5 years, which is more than all the apps built in the last 40 years. That's a huge number if we think about it. And this is only possible if we extend the innovation capability into the hands of end users with appropriate level of governance. But that's where the power of Power Platform comes into the equation. Let's look into what's actually in the Power Platform. So we've got 4 tools in the Power Platform family: Power Apps and Portals, Power Automate, Power BI. You may have heard of Power BI because it's been around for quite some time, and Power Virtual Agents. Power Apps and Portals is a way to quickly build applications for your internal staff, and portal capability to actually interact with external people to your organization. Think about all the Excel spreadsheets that you've got. You can now automate them with a great interface leveraging Power Apps. Think about all your backend processes or legacy applications which you're not able to integrate with other systems. You can essentially innovate leveraging Power Apps and Power Portals. Power Automate is your workflow automation capability. Think about all the workflows in schools, whether it's approvals, notifications, you can all automate that leveraging the Power Automate capability in the Power Platform family. Power BI is your way of bringing data together to do visualizations and intelligent insights. So think about testing data, attendance data, how you can actually bring intelligent insights into all these data that's sitting across different systems. And lastly, we have Power Virtual Agents, which essentially is a low-code way of bringing chatbots through drag and drop capability. We recently had one of the universities that leveraged the Power Virtual Agent capability to essentially respond to inquiries coming from students, coming from parents, as COVID had first hit, and students were nervous in terms of, well, what's happening to their degree? Are they going to be coming to campus? So all those inquiries were essentially managed by Power Virtual Agent. This particular university was actually able to deploy Power Virtual Agent within a matter of weeks. Underneath the Power Platform, we've got some foundational building blocks that really make the platform truly low code. There are about 450 connectors that really help you connect to various source systems. So think about applications like Salesforce, ServiceNow, Oracle, SQL. All these connectors can make connecting into these source systems really, really simple. We then have what we call as the AI builder capability, which is really infusing the goodness of artificial intelligence into the applications. Traditionally, AI was something that the data scientists were essentially helping us out with, but now we've got these pre-built AI models that can really help us create intelligent applications. Some of the AI models, such as sentiment analysis, text translation, forms processing, all these can really help create intelligent applications. And then we've got other foundational elements such as Dataverse, which is the foundational data layer where you can have a common data model, and accelerator solutions such as the education accelerator, which comes with some predefined templates that really helps building the applications quite easily. And lastly, we've got some governance tools that really help bring governance into this whole concept of citizen development. Today, we're going to focus on a particular use case that focuses on a couple of the aspects in the Power Platform family. In particular, we will be talking about Power Apps and Portals and Power Automate. With that, I want to hand over to Brad to talk a little bit about the use case and how did we come about with this use case, Brad?
Sure, thanks, Nancy. It's been really interesting having discussions with different schools and finding so many common problems out there. So as a result of these conversations, we've seen the Power Platform as a way to solve these common problems quite easily. Now, the Power App that I'm showing today is a big one. It's one that you would consider to be a core system in a school. But most importantly, because we're using this common platform, all of the little things that we need to do to support that platform become possible for teachers, for non-IT people, for people that haven't been programming for 10 years. That's where it's really interesting, because right now we grab Excel and we make an Excel spreadsheet and we share it somewhere, and that's our app. How great to replace that with a proper app with structured forms, security, login, the ability to share information. All of that's available by using the Power Platform. So some of the common things that we started to deal with is that the world is a complex place now, not just because of COVID, but think of a family structure. 50 years ago, we would be designing a system for mother, father, and 2 parents and a dog. That's not the case now. We've got step families, we've got complex relationships, we've got the fact that nowadays your relationship to a student doesn't dictate your rights over the student anymore. Parents do not necessarily have rights over their own children. We've got court orders and things like that to take into account. And if your system has an old-fashioned way of looking at things, it's not going to meet your current needs. And really, if you try and expose your internal information to parents to help their lives to be easier, if it doesn't respect the way that the family is structured, it's not going to work. So we do have some fundamental problems to address there. Straight away, the login. Anyone that has children will probably know that you usually get a student ID and a password, and that's how you log in. That's got massive problems. One of the things that I'd like to show, actually, let's have a look now. And let's see the login that we do have. So I'll just share my screen. Here is an example parent portal that we have. And we have the ability to sign in. Now, one of the things that I'm doing here is signing in as Tom. Tom is a parent, and Tom is going to log in under his name, which is fantastic. Straight away, there's a great improvement. We come to Tom's dashboard. Tom has 2 children. Here is one of the really frustrating things at the moment. We have 2 children, which means at the moment, I would normally have 2 student logins and 2 passwords. and I would have to log in separately to find out what's going on in my household. So if I'm logging in as a parent, I have the ability to consider each of my children separately. I'll get back to that alert in just a moment. I can see what's going on for each of my children, manage them separately, but in the same place. It knows that the relationship that I have with these children and what I can do. So already that's a great step forward. What we have here is the dashboard. Most importantly, parents are often time poor these days. If action is required, it needs to come to the top of the page so people can have it brought to their attention. So the area I've got here is called parent consent required. This is where a parent has to make a decision. I've got two examples here. One's a rowing tryout and the other one is agreeing, giving consent to the mobile phone policy. So it's not just about events. Let's face it, event management in schools is hard work, but it could also be about getting consent to policies. We then have events that have been agreed to and just general events such as an assembly. So this is the one place where we get all of our attention focused. We can then go in and have a look at each student's information. And for Anton here, one thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is this area, parents and guardians. This is where we break that old-fashioned connection between a parent, say, and an authority level. We've got just some examples here where we have an emergency contact who's authorized to pick up Anton if he gets sick. And the parents both have full authority. It could be an aunt that has full authority for a fortnight while the parents are overseas. We have the ability to record that now and have the system honor those security roles, which is something that we, with duty of care, we have to have these days. So one of the things that we've also found is that parents need to have ways of updating forms quickly and easily. With staff in the admin part of a school usually overworked, particularly at certain times of the year, we need to get rid of the manual paper forms. We need to stop the retyping, and we need to stop issues around validation. So one of the ones that I have here is a medical plan. We have the ability to easily have a parent create a medical plan by just clicking a button, filling in a form, and pressing save. Now, one of the big problems that we usually have is that we need parents to authorize every form. If you've logged in as a student login, you don't know who's authorizing the form. That can create issues around legality of the form. But fortunately, we've logged in as the parent, so we know who's authorizing the form. It makes life a lot easier.
So Brad, just
Yes.
a quick question. Parents have got so many usernames, passwords as they're logging into different systems. Can they bring their social identity just so that it's one less password, one less username to think about?
Completely. The bane of everyone's lives these days is our usernames and passwords. They have the ability to use LinkedIn, Google, Instagram, of course, ADFS for Microsoft. All of the common passwords can be recognized in the system. They can just bring their identity across.
And how mobile friendly is this portal capability, Brad?
By default, mobile friendly. It will adjust as the screen shrinks and wrap around. So it's perfectly fine for tablets, perfectly fine for mobile devices.
And does that mean that we can send out notifications to parents and things like that?
It does. There's a number of ways we can do it. Most importantly, if we go to the front page, we have the news section, but we also have the ability, because we've got Power Automate as our workflow tool, a workflow can do these days pretty much anything. So we can have notification workflows that go off. We can have workflows that say, parent, the medical plan for this child is about to expire. Therefore, can you please organize a new medical plan? That's one less thing that the admin staff have to chase people for. One of the other things we've also done in the system, just to encourage people to, for that call to action, is with Charlie, the other child, his medical plan has expired. One thing I'd like to show here is that even though Charlie has been invited to try out for the rowing team, the parent cannot actually give consent because the medical plan's expired. I mean, when you think of physical activities at a off-school location, you would need to make sure that a child has a current medical plan if required. So here is the call to action. The parents are not only getting notified through Power Automate, but when they try and use the system itself is encouraging them to fill in that form, have it automatically processed by the system.
This is really fantastic because it's basically showing that how you can actually put business logic into a Power App portal that you've built, right? So not just notifications, but also infusing a bit of intelligence into your application.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the really nice things, going back to Power Automate, is that the workflow doesn't just sit and deal with the portal. Because of all the connectors, it can contact your current student management system and update details as well, if that's a feature that you require. For instance, if your student management system captures medical plan information, why not let people enter that through the portal and then update your backend system? All automated, no double handling of data. I'm going to switch back to Anton. So we've got management of events as being a large part of school administration and school processes. So just to show the events that we have here, I have a calendar set up here for my friend Anton, with a couple of the events that we've seen on the front page also coming through in the calendar. One of the really nice things that I like about this is that not only can you select a child, but you can select all children, and all of their events will appear on the calendar. So this then becomes the household's calendar for all the children and all of their school appointments. Fantastic idea. We actually had the suggestion the other day to color code them. So that's something that's coming very soon as well.
Even better.
Yeah. If you do select a child though, you do have the ability to get a full event list of, say, the entire term or the entire year, if you're planning that far ahead, not just the next 30 days that we show on the dashboard. So that's a really fantastic way of showing the events to the parents in a very friendly way, which is great. But realistically, we need to make sure that the teachers have a good, solid ability to manage these events in a much more complex way. So one thing that we do have here is the rowing tryouts record. This screen does look busy. It's full powered, all the features turned on. We have the ability to cull this right back or make another Power App that is a very simple version of this, where teachers can just fill out the information they need and have it submitted into the back end. If I was a full-time event manager, this is the screen that I would want. A couple of things for people who are looking for ways in which they can harness Power Apps. We've got a couple of things going on here. We have an approval process for a year coordinator. How fantastic that what if they had an approval Power App on their phone? So when approvals come through, it's on their phone, they can instantly make a decision. We have a very common request here, which is if we're having an event, is a room setup required? Because we need the people who set up the rooms to manage their workload as well. Why not give them their own dashboard? Why not give them their own Power App so they can see pictures and floor layouts of what the room should look like? These are all the little applications that normally would sit around your system, but normally you'd be using Excel or something like that to do. Another really common one is catering. The requirements around catering can be quite complex, and for teachers that don't deal with this very often, how nice to have an app that they can look at on their computer or on their phone to guide them through the steps of that process. And having something like we have up the top here, where there's multiple stages and they know where they're up to and what they need to do to get to the next stage.
So Brad,
sure.
Another
Yes.
question. How flexible is the system? I mean, when we started off the presentation, we were talking about, letting teachers innovate, letting staff innovate. How low code this application is for us to be able to make changes to the application?
Sure. I'm going into Thomas's profile here. The profile page can often be very useful for people who need to collect parental information for their departments of education. Often funding is tied back to, say, the education level or the job role of a parent. So we need this information, and it can change over time. Here I've got Thomas's page. As we can see, we've got 2 sets of columns with some fields in there. I'm now going to go to the form designer. And sorry about the resolution for the people out there, but for those who have nice wide screens, they'll see that this is basically exactly the same as what we've just seen. So if I wanted to add, say, birthday field, I could then just drag it and I'll put that just under their mobile phone. And there it is. I save that, publish, and it's live. It goes straight through and alters the portal in almost real time.
That is really great. Thanks, Brad.
Sure. Okay, so one of the really interesting things is the fact that this can live quite happily with your existing student management system. We do have the ability to move features between the two, but realistically, what we're trying to do here is what you're trying to do in your schools whenever you've got an IT problem with your systems. We're trying to add features to what you have currently to make things better, to make things easier, to meet your requirements. So the idea of the portal is that it can take the features of your student management system and add to them and provide the features that aren't currently being provided. So that's a really powerful thing when we think of how much effort there is in changing systems in a school. Often that can be a really major project. So how nice to be able to just add features as you need them without disturbing what's there already. Okay, so we do have a number of things that we can do with the portal. I've just spoken about the student management system, and I'd like to point out something else that we can do, which is timetable information. So currently it's school holidays. Let's have a look at next week. Because we have this ability with Power Automate to move information from one place to another, even if it's in a different system, we can take timetabling information from your timetable system and display it to the parents. Sometimes the current systems that you may find, they may do this. They may do this by showing information in a different format or take you to a different website. Often it's not done cleanly or making you feel like you're part of the same experience. So we wanted to make sure that parents had the same feel, which again is really easy to do in the Power Platform because everything follows a theme. We do have, this has got, I think, 2 weeks worth of attendance, and it gives parents an idea of what's going on. I've got all children selected, so you can then put in information for one child and get to see what's going on with a particular child. In terms of the possibilities with our Power apps, well, we have a class list today. It's a little bit historic, but what we can see here is that for Anton, here is a list of all the information that he needs to know about where he's going today and where he needs to be next. So as he's running out the door, he can look down on his phone, he can see the class that he needs to be in and go straight there. This is possible because of the platform being able to share information and extend. At the moment, this is not a student portal, but it could be. Just one more Power App, open it up to the students, and you've then got a student portal as well.
This is really going back to your previous point, Brad, that we're not, this particular use case is not to actually replace the student management system, but bring data from student management system to have easy access to that data. So this timetabling system or data would actually be sitting in another application, and you're actually pulling that information into the portal capability. And I know, we're kind of running short on time here, but the portal capability is quite extensive. But I also want to cover off just talking about some of the other use cases of Power Apps. Clearly, portal is one really strong capability around, how do we improve that interaction with the parents? But what are some of the other use cases that you're seeing around Power Apps and Power Automate in the K-12 space?
Quite a few. We've spoken a lot about Power Apps and Power Automate, but let's not forget Power BI, the giant in the room.
Yes.
Power BI is fantastic. The ability to have the strength to analyze your own information in your own time, in your own way is fantastic. It's quick. We can generate reports very quickly based on common data, pulling in information from, say, the portal, timetables, assessment systems. So things like, I'm physically in Victoria, so using Victoria as an example, the reporting, the student reporting structure that's used in Victoria, that can be presented in Power BI as an interactive dashboard. So people who are aware of the layout, we've got some example data here of Anton. I put this together yesterday afternoon just for some fun. This could be a complete report for Anton published where parents can come in, click on subjects, and have a complete interactive experience showing the child's progress in the last 6 months since the last report. The possibilities once we get hold of this data are really interesting, and it's really up to the teachers themselves to work out how they get the best use out of this data. So you don't have to put in a request for a report and hope that it gets done sometimes. You have the ability to do it yourself, which is fantastic. That's one example of the Power BI. In terms of things like just go back to the homepage here. You've got issues like that I've touched on briefly, things like the room setup, the approval process. We have so many different approval processes and administration in schools that's usually handled by emails or pieces of paper going around. Yeah, we have the ability with Power Automate to replace the entire thing, to have repeatable, reusable approval processes with reminders and escalations and all the things that we need. Send it to 3 people and you need 2 out of 3 to get an approval. Those kind of rules are just there available for us to use. So instead of sending emails around and having to record or print out emails, heaven forbid, that certain person has approved something at a certain time, let the system do it automatically. It's there for you. You might as well use it. It's just so powerful.
All those forms as well that, paper-based sitting around, for people to process those forms are such easy candidates for Power Apps, right? Like any data entry, Excel or form that we're thinking about, that we can think about in schools, are such a great way to start the Power Apps journey. We had one of the schools where a teacher actually created a reading assessment app to enter data around reading assessment for children, and then actually using Power BI to really visualize that data. How great is that, to let teachers innovate with these low-code platforms? But I wanted to actually ask a question to Cindy as well. I know, Cindy, you volunteer as a tutor. So where do you see Power Apps being used in your job as a tutor?
Yeah, I think back to sort of the paper-based processes. one of the things that we always have to do is like chase parents up about registering and doing all their permissions forms for their students. So I think having that whole system around like automating that process would be really great. Another one is also managing all the different spreadsheets. I mean, the way we do it is we just have a whole bunch of different class roles and spreadsheets. So you end up with like 10 different spreadsheets for all the different classes that you run, and then marking attendance through spreadsheets.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think the other area, Brad, that you probably are seeing a lot of customers, I think this probably goes outside of education industry as well, is around all those corporate processes, right? How do we actually automate, transform, and bring some form of reform into these finance HR processes with legacy systems? So how do we actually really enhance that experience? I'm sure you must be seeing that, outside of education space as well, right?
Exactly. We start off in, say, a Power App, and we deal with a relationship or a particular situation. But the implications of what we're doing could end up in finance or HR. A really common use for Power Apps is incident reporting. To be able to report an incident with a child or a staff member on the spot, on your phone, and have it immediately go into the system is really powerful. But then to have that trigger off HR processes, to then trigger off maybe mandatory reporting, to be able to handle that whole process and the whole connectivity in the same platform that you're using for everything else, it's fantastic. And of course, just like using Excel, once you know how to do Excel for one spreadsheet, you know how to do it for 100 spreadsheets. Same with Power Platform. Once you learn how to use the Power Platform, it becomes so quick and easy to apply to all the problems without the limitations.
I think they also say that if you know how to use Excel, you can build your first Power App as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the end, it's all data.
Absolutely. And I think with that, I mean, like it's clear that the opportunities are limitless when it comes to the Power Platform. But, we've got limited time today. So I just wanted to thank you, Brad, for, showing us all the amazing work that you're doing in the school space. And Cindy, thank you for hosting this. For any questions, please feel free to reach out to Brad, Cindy, or myself. But I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time and having a look through this webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.